Well, as we reported earlier, Nigeria has recorded 758 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours. And according to the Center for Disease Control in the country, this brings the total number of confirmed coronavirus cases to 74,132. 66,494 people have been discharged. Unfortunately, 1,200 have died from the virus. And even as Nigeria battles the coronavirus, pupils are still at schools, learning amidst the global pandemic. And so let's bring in the special advisor to the Lagos State Governor on Education, Tokunbo Wahab, as we discuss education amid COVID-19 and the improvements in the sector in Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday, Mr. Wahab.
Thank you for having me.
Unfortunately, I'd like to start from the negatives. As at today, schools in Kaduna State are shutting down indefinitely because of the rise in cases of COVID-19. Lagos State remains the epicenter of the epidemic in Nigeria. Are you considering shutting down schools again in Lagos?
In the light of what we've been observing in the past few days, or maybe weeks now, we are holding consultation and we wait to take, and we hope to take the best decision in the interest of our people and our citizens.
Okay, Mr. Wahab, even though you might take that decision, I guess we're moving into Christmas anyway, so it may not matter too much. I want to sort of ask more about the common challenges we face in Nigeria when it comes to things like this, which is inclusiveness or even accessibility when it comes to families who are not as buoyant, so to speak. So can you help us understand how you've supported less able families during this period to continue learning despite the challenges of COVID-19?
Okay. When this pandemic happened, it was apparent to all of us that we have to change our strategies. In the immediate, what we did was to shut down our public schools and put in place infrastructure that will enable our pupils learn using the online platform. And we're going to thank those people that came to support us. We used the radio platform for our primary and secondary, and then we used some of the IT tools that were given to us for some of the secondary school pupils. However, for the tertiary, I thank Mr. Governor for being very proactive, engaging NVivo to deploy the LMS platform for all our tertiary institutions across the state from April. That allowed our pupils, our students, to be fully engaged in the course of the pandemic. And when we noticed the first wave had subsided substantially, we also advised the tertiary institutions to open in phases. The same thing applied to our secondary and then our primary. We didn't bring all the pupils and the students back to school at the same time to avoid clustering. Now we have observed the second wave and it's global. Luckily for us, we know most of the schools are going to shut down for Christmas. We're going to use the next few days and weeks to also observe the trend and then take a well-informed decision. Look, we also need to put these things side by side to ensure we don't put a disruption to the educational system, which is what is being done globally. Schools are seeing how they can run the academic calendar without fully disrupting it. And to a large extent, schools are now trying to use more of IT to see how they can use that to impact knowledge. So as a state, we are deploying that fully, and we hope to deploy more of that as we go into the new year. When you observe that the governor had put his skin in the game and increased the budget for education to 143 billion naira for 2021, is to put in place most of this infrastructure to help our pupils.
What has been the biggest challenge in navigating this inclusivity and education really during a pandemic in a state like Lagos? And has there been any silver lining? Have we learned any lessons ahead of the next epidemic or pandemic?
Yes, we've learned lessons that we can't do things the way we used to do them and expect a different result. As a state, we've been very proactive in the way we responded to this, and globally, we've been acknowledged for that. And I thank the incident commander. I wish him a quick recovery. This is Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu. For me, I think the lessons are we must put in place infrastructure that would help us reduce one-on-one interaction in classes. The infrastructure we're talking about is the IT infrastructure globally. And I'm glad also this government is spending so much to put in place a statewide cable that will come in and be deployed in the next few months as an infrastructure.
Okay. Mr. Wahab, I want to ask you two questions because two of them come to mind at the same time. The first is, when you talk of innovations and your response to them, could you give us an appraisal of how the radio tuition went? Because we know that the less able students at one point, they were being taught via radio. So if you could appraise that particular endeavor. And then secondly, are you planning to collaborate with NGOs? Because I did hear of one NGO that was running a tech hub for students. So with these people already doing something on the ground, are you considering collaborating with NGOs who are going above and beyond to meet the needs that the government can't possibly meet on its own?
Okay, for the radio collaboration and the impact, to a large extent, I want to thank those that supported us during that period. And I would not want to give a firm assessment. Let the public assess us based on the results. Results are coming out for WAEC and those that did NECO and those that did their common entrance test and stuff across the state. For the NGO, we have no choice. We've made it clear. Government will create the enabling environment. We need the support from non-governmental agencies to support the government in whatever way they can help the government. The government cannot do everything on its own. And we thank them for what they've done so far. We're thanking them for those things they will do in the future. And we are always available. I repeat, always available to collaborate with them.
Okay, a quick correction on my part. I had earlier referred to you as Mr. Commissioner, but indeed you're the special advisor to Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu on education. Two schools so far, we know, have reported incidents of COVID-19 infections while the children were in school. Are there any other schools that have reported cases? And what really is the form of learning at the moment? I understand it's staggered, but can you bring us up to speed as how this truly works?
To the best of my knowledge, we've not reported any other outbreak out of those two schools, beyond those two schools you mentioned. And for us as a government, and we've put in place a policy to ensure that the learning environment must not be clustered. Let the staggering of our classes continue for as long as we can put them in place. Now, there's a vaccine, yes, but even the vaccine, with what we've read, would not even go around. If it comes to the country in January or February, 20 million. So what we have to do is let us take personal responsibility in our own little space. Keep to those protocols, use the face mask, use your sanitizer, use the soap, use the water, and then keep the distance. That's the most important thing we have to do, and that's the message we're sending out to everybody. Let us be personally responsible in our own little corners. Let us take responsibility for how we can manage this pandemic. It's a pandemic, it's global. There's so much you can do, but let your neighbor and yourself and every one of us be very, very responsible. If we are, I can assure you, we can halt the spread and then minimize the impact.
Okay, Mr.
But we can't be living as though we can't be behaving as though this pandemic is non-existent. That is not the culture. Thank you.
Thank you. And looking ahead, and just again commending your focus on technology as a way forward in education, but also wanting to find out from you, because a lot of people are not particularly impressed with the low investment in education nationally. So what are you doing to ensure that people prioritize investment in education and maybe even attract that investment from other sources? What are you doing to look ahead and get that monetary investment on the ground before we're at a critical point again?
This year, the 2021 budget for Lagos State, education is taking the second largest chunk, 143 billion. I repeat, 143 billion for education. This is second to works and infrastructure. then followed by health, 118 billion. This tells you the governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, is putting the investment in human capital in the right place. I'm not talking about national here, I'm talking about Lagos State, where I'm the special advisor to the governor on education. The governor has put 143 billion, set it aside in our 2021 budget. And this covers just not just your primary, your secondary, even our tertiary. And then the IT deployment and impact on it.
And what would you say has been the biggest lesson so far that you've learned? I know I've asked you about silver linings and the lessons you've learned, but what is that one critical thing you're taking away from this pandemic?
Is that you can make all your plans, but there's a divine place for whatever we're doing. Nobody envisaged the pandemic. So for me, the lessons are life is so important. We fail to appreciate the little things we have. You can tell me you have this, you don't have this, you don't have this. But when you look around you, you hear this one is down today with a COVID symptom, the next morning is gone. And then you ask yourself, why am I here? What has made me different? That is divine angle to it. So it's a major lesson to appreciate each second of your life, each minute, each hour, and each day of your life, and live it to the best and impact on humanity as though it's your last.
That's inspiring. If I may come in on that, speaking about impacting humanity to the best of your ability, I want to take you more back to maybe spending within the education sector. Teacher training and equipping of our teachers so that even when we speak of technology, so that they're able to take advantage of that technology and adapt, because we need to have teachers who are able to adapt to situations and perhaps even teach our children in different ways to the ways that they are used to. What particular attention are you going to be giving to teacher training and development?
The first 6 months of Mr. Governor's tenure, the first investment he did in education was to engage EcoExcel. EcoExcel involves using IT compliant tablets across the state to train the teachers in our primary schools across the state, I repeat, so that they can have the same platform, the same curriculum, and then they can be monitored on how they deploy it to teach our pupils from primary 1 to primary 6. And that was the first major investment we did by this government. Then we also had to recruit teachers that are 21st century compliant. And that's still ongoing. For primary, we are still doing the recruitment. For secondary, as I speak, they are going to training and recruitment as we speak. These are major investments in the educational sector. You see, it's easier for us to sit in our comfort zones and not appreciate what is being done. We have a gap. The target is to bridge the gap between the private and the public schools, like they have done in some other African countries like Rwanda. But we're not going to get there overnight. We're going to get there by a deliberate plan and investments. And Mr. Governor made it very clear. His priorities are education, health, and then infrastructure. And it's not checking away from those listed priorities. And the budget has just showed that back to back. So as a state, we are doing those investments in the right places. And also, as an agency, I know we're also driving the technology and merging it with our own normal education. Like we had in what we call the DSIL. That's the Digital Skill Initiative Lagos. It used to be called Code Lagos. Teaching kids in the primary, secondary school on how to do coding, Python, scratching, cloud, and stuff. Now, why are we doing those things? We have also realized that for the fourth revolution, which is an IT revolution, you must be prepared for that and not let it just catch up on you. So we are in as much as we're teaching them the regular curriculum, we're also bringing those knowledge to them. And the libraries we are using to intervene for them also, we also ensure that our modern libraries across the state, our schools, have not just the books, but you have the computers, you have other things that you need to bridge that gap and integrate the learning system.
Yes, and just to follow up on that as well, I'm actually, cautiously optimistic and impressed with the way you're articulating your vision. But I want to still ask, because a lot of people are not particularly impressed nationally with the attention we've given to education. What is it that made the difference with Lagos State? What is it that made you decide to prioritize education in the way you have, which is not that common, I have to keep emphasizing?
The vision of the leader.
Yes, okay.
The vision of Mr. Governor is the vision of Mr. Governor and the master plan of the state. If you have a governor that says, this is my vision, this is what I want to drive, then as a member of his cabinet, you have to key to that vision. So what we have done as a government, we had our own discussion, we had our own retreats, and he made his vision very clear, and we wrote it down, and then we are running with that vision. So you can say, yeah, maybe federal is not doing enough. Lagos is a center of excellence. Lagos is a microcosm of Nigeria. Lagos is where everybody comes to each and every day of their life. Somebody is coming to Lagos to stay. Yeah, it stretches our infrastructure. But as a state, we have to be proactive enough to lead by our cosmopolitan tag and then to prepare for that and those eventualities. That's why we're Lagos. And that's why we're a center of excellence.
Great, well said, and that's a good place to leave it. We only hope that these plans and these lessons learned will outlive and outlast the pandemic. Special Advisor to the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu on Education, Tokunbo Wahab, thank you so much for being on Newsday.